All right. Today we are jumping headfirst into a really fascinating and, let's be honest, provocative book, John T. Hand's In the Name of God. We're going to break down the central argument of the book, which tries to tell the evolutionary story of how religion and violence got so tangled up together. So, let's just get right into it.
So the whole thing kicks off with a massive puzzle. You've heard it a million times. Evolution is survival of the fittest. But if that's true, then being nice, altruism, helping someone else even when it costs you something, that shouldn't even exist. So, why do we do it? Why do we cooperate at all? That's the big question we have to tackle first.
And this leads us right to our first big idea, what's known as the selfish gene paradox. It sounds like a total contradiction, right? How in the world can selfless, kind behavior come from genes that are supposedly, selfish?
Okay, so when Richard Dawkins came up with the term selfish gene, he didn't mean that our genes are sitting around consciously scheming. As Tian makes really clear, it's just a metaphor. A gene is successful if it's good at one thing, getting copied into the next generation. That's it. It's a little copying machine, and any trait that helps it do that job is going to stick around. But that still leaves us with the paradox. How does helping someone else help my genes get copied?
Well, evolution's first answers to this puzzle are actually pretty brilliant, but they have a major limitation. They only really work in small groups. They create what you can picture as circles of moral concern.
Our basic moral instincts seem to have evolved with two simple rules hardwired in. The first one is kin selection. Basically, you're nice to your relatives because they share a bunch of your genes. So by helping them, you're kind of indirectly helping your own genes get passed on. Makes sense. The second rule is reciprocal altruism, which is the classic, I'll scratch your back if you scratch mine. You cooperate with people you're going to see again, building up this web of trust.
The philosopher Peter Singer came up with a really great way to visualize this. Think about your moral world as a set of circles, expanding outwards. And right there in the very center, that's you, of course. So evolution pushes that first circle out a bit to include our kin, our family. Then it gets a little bigger to include our partners, our close-knit community, the people where your reputation really matters. But here's the crucial part. For a really, really long time, that's where the circle stopped.
And the result of that is this incredibly sharp, incredibly powerful divide in our psychology. For the in-group, anyone inside that circle, our moral rules are switched on. We cooperate, we care. But for the out-group, that's everybody else, those rules are just suspended. At best, we're indifferent. At worst, we see them as hostile competitors.
Now, this whole in-group psychology thing worked perfectly for thousands and thousands of years when we lived in tiny groups. But what happens when societies get bigger? This growth creates a huge social crisis, what we can call the problem of strangers.
T. Hand, drawing on the work of Jared Diamond, shows just how dramatic this scale-up was. We went from these little bands of a few dozen relatives to tribes of a few hundred, and then to chiefdoms and states with thousands, even tens of thousands, of total strangers all trying to live together in cities. Our old moral toolkit, just help your family and your neighbors, it just couldn't handle that. It broke.
And this quote just puts it in the bluntest terms possible. For most of human history, the default reaction to an outsider was deep suspicion, maybe even hostility. You just can't run a city like that. A completely new social technology was needed to solve this problem, and fast.
And this is where we get to the absolute core idea of the book. The evolutionary solution that allowed huge groups of strangers to cooperate was religion. More specifically, the belief in big, all-knowing, moralizing gods.
So how did this happen? Well, it piggybacked on some pre-existing quirks in our brains. First, we've got something scientists call HAD. It's our built-in tendency to see intention or agency everywhere. Think about it. You hear a rustle in the grass. Your brain doesn't just think, oh, it's the wind. It thinks, that could be a lion. It's a better safe than sorry system that makes us naturally assume that unseen agents are at work all around us. The second piece of the cognitive puzzle is that our brains just love what are called minimally counterintuitive ideas. These are concepts that are mostly normal, but break one or two key rules about how the world works. And that makes them super memorable, super sticky. A classic example is a ghost. It can walk through walls, which is weird, but it still has thoughts and feelings, which is normal. This provides the perfect template for concepts like gods and spirits.
So okay, let's put it all together. Our brains are already primed to believe in unseen agents, and they're really good at remembering concepts like gods. Well, this was the perfect solution to the problem of strangers. See, in a small village, I'm not going to cheat you because my reputation would be ruined. But in a big anonymous city, I can probably get away with it. But what if there's an all-knowing supernatural watcher who sees everything I do and will punish me if I cheat? All of a sudden, I have a very strong reason to cooperate, even with a total stranger.
And there's some really cool experimental evidence that backs this up. In studies where people play games where they can anonymously share money, the control groups are, gotta selfish. But when another group is subconsciously reminded of religion just by seeing some religious words flash on a screen, they become way more generous. The mere suggestion that a watcher is present makes people behave better.
So problem solved, right? Religion acts as a social glue. But here is the dark twist in the story. The very same thing that solved the problem of cooperation within the group created a whole new level of conflict between groups.
See, religion didn't erase our deep-seated in-group/out-group psychology. It supercharged it. The moral circle got a lot bigger. It expanded from our tiny tribe to everyone who shared our faith. But by doing that, it made the dividing line between us and them, between the believers and the non-believers, sharper, deeper, and more cosmic than ever before.
And this kind of moral double standard is laid out pretty explicitly in a lot of sacred texts. As Tehan points out, the famous command, "You shall not murder," is often interpreted as an in-group rule. It applies to us. But for out-groups, the rules can be, well, very different. Deuteronomy, for instance, gives pretty clear instructions for holy war, even commanding the complete destruction of rival groups. The point is, this isn't a bug in the code, it is the code.
And this all brings us to Tehan's incredibly powerful conclusion. All the love, the charity, the incredible self-sacrifice that religion inspires, what he calls its moral beauty, it springs from the exact same psychological root as the holy wars, the inquisitions, and the genocides committed in God's name. They are two sides of the very same evolutionary coin, a coin that was forged to ensure in-group survival in a world defined by inter-group competition. So, that leaves us with a pretty heavy question. What if our deepest capacity for love and our most terrifying capacity for hatred aren't actually opposites? What if they're just two different expressions of the same ancient primal drive to belong? And if that's true, what does that mean for how we navigate our very divided world today? Something to think about. Thanks for joining me.